Hey there, viewers! It's been a long time coming, but finally a video is putting the spotlight on one of Playmates' final offerings from the classic Godzilla line. To say I had to dig this one up is an understatement. It's time to review the Kaiju with the puppy dog persona, Baragon. But wait! In tradition of Godzilla movies, we're pitting our favorite subterranean saurian against himself, as we compare it with the 2023 Movie Monster Series version. Get ready for Baragon vs. Baragon. In my Ibara review, I revealed that I have a personal holy trinity, the horror of the deep, the samurai of the skies, Rodan, and the subterranean saurian, Baragon. As a kid, it started with Rodan, but after seeing Destroy All Monsters for the first time, the glimpse of the kaiju with the big ears intrigued me. I hadn't learned about Frankenstein Conquers the World yet, so I assumed there must have been another Godzilla movie out there, where the two came to blows. After all, the movie featured many of the Big G's returning opponents turned allies, like Kumonga, Anguirus, Rodan, and Mothra. A few years later, I would get a few good still shots of this bizarre monster in Ian Thorne's Godzilla book. I would also see a cameo of his toy in Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster in the background. For a monster with many references, I was hard-pressed to find the actual film he came from. But that would change in 1985 when I caught Frankenstein Conquers the World one Saturday afternoon. And because I was 10 or 11, I rooted for the dinosaur over the ugly man in that fight. Baragon, the true villain of that film, is a very expressive kaiju, which I think makes up most of his appeal. This is a large part to his ears' animated responses, his moving eyes, and the impressive performance by Mr. Haru Nakajima. He's also well equipped. From his extreme burrowing abilities, illuminating horn, and his fire breath, he holds his own well against the more agile Frankenstein. But putting Baragon on top tier with Rodan didn't become a thing until I received a nice package of Bandai vinyls from a friend in Japan. Of the two, I received was a 1993 8-inch Destroy All Monsters Baragon. After studying the creature's design, Baragon easily became one of my favorite kaiju to this day. It's a wonder why he isn't utilized more often outside of his scene-stealing scenes from GMK from 2003. Surprisingly, my Baragon collection isn't that big, aside from that 93 version and the recently acquired 2023 offering from the Movie Monster series. I have only the GMK vinyl and that super detailed Revolte Kyoto set. And now this guy, Playmates Toho series Baragon. The last hurrah for the Toho series offerings, Playmates gave us an impressive piece, but it's not without its flaws. Not to be outdone, Bandai Movie Monster series released their own take the same year. Let's take a look at both. Starting with Playmates, the first thing I noticed about this figure is it's got some heft. The material here doesn't feel like the softer light vinyl that Bandai implements in their products. It leans into heavy plastic, but I'm not 100% confident when it comes to identifying the materials yet. It gives this figure a feeling of added quality, on top of the paint apps where they're a step up from the usual Bandai results. No shade intended. Cast in a reddish-brown plastic vinyl, mostly matte apart from his shiny arms. Not sure why that is, but it was good enough for Playmates to release. Baragon sports peach flesh paint apps on his horn, teeth, and spikes on his head. The claws, both hands and feet, and the ridges down his back that stops right at the tail end of his tail. His inner ears have a lighter shade of this, leaning towards the flesh side, and his inner mouth specifically, the tongue is a pleasing shade of red. The eyes are standard white and black pupils, upturned, which is common with early kaiju of the 60s. His colors are closer to the Destroy All Monsters motif, specifically with the back ridges and the inner ears having that color applied. Further implied is the position of his ears, which were swept back rather than perked up like they would be expressively on occasion in Frankenstein Conquers the World. Lastly, his horn's position is curved upwards, not jutting out straight like his earlier version. Since we are talking about the sculpt, the work is commendable here. The details in this figure are particularly good, with random bumps on the body and his arms and legs, with folds around the torso and the legs conveying a baggy costume. Those are the details I'm here for, because it really shows the sculptor paid close attention to the source material in realizing this collectible. The underbelly has that trademark squared pattern, resembling a reptile's scaly hide. The head sculpt is really where I'll draw some ire. All the elements are in place: the wide mouth, the sharp teeth, the bumpy surface, the horned crests, the large eyes, kinda in a baked manner, and that's where my criticism begins. Baragon's eyes are usually wider and more circular, where this one seems half open, almost like in a sleepy sort of way. Combined with that, it seems like there's too much head surface. It gives off a weird, distorted version of this kaiju skull. Everything else is spot on, but for some reason, his head undermines it as a sum. Another detractor is the position of his legs and feet, which offers some adjustment to set. Baragon flush on a flat surface. As you can see, we rarely get a full touchdown here, so that's a loss. With the Bandai offering, it's also a bit of a hit or miss. Sculpt-wise, he's leapt from the screen as a 6-inch vinyl replica, but I can't help but wonder if Bandai merely scanned and scaled down their superb 92 8-inch version. It looks exactly alike in terms of posture and details. The big differences are the colors, of course, where the 92 figure was cast in a dark muddy olive with sprays of copper and metallic blue, accented with a fleshy color for his horn, and gold on his nails. But on closer inspection, this does appear to be a new mold, as the original figure's ears seem pushed forward ever so slightly more. Again, reinforcing his appearance from Frankenstein Conquers the World, Bandai Baragon is primarily cast in that reddish-brown color, with no alternate color for his accents. His back ridge is no longer broken up by that tannish spray, nor are his inner ears. His teeth and nails do have paint apps, and of course, his eyes, wide and ping-pong-like, dark pupils adding to his puppy sorousness. The inner mouth is a nice bright red, breaking up the monotony of his solid dominating color. If you compare him to the movie he's based on, he does retain that color motif, and true to his on-screen influence, the large floppy ears are perked up forward instead of lying back as they are in Destroy All Monsters. Playmates Baragon has movement in his arms, legs, head, and tail. Compared to most collectibles, that's really nothing to do flips over, but when it comes to kaiju vinyl figures, it feels like a premium release. The arms can rotate full circumference, as can the legs, tail, and head. Pretty incredible if you ask me. Again, the posing is strangely limited thanks to the wonky legs not sitting flat together, but at least you can pose him better than most kaiju vinyl. Bandai Baragon has movement in his arms and legs as well, with both being able to do a full 360 rotation. His tail, too, has a swivel joint, which is nice because with Bandai, Articulation can be a Cracker Jack box. You'll never know what you'll get. Man, I just dated myself. Anyways, the big bummer here, despite having a perfectly seam already set, is that the Baragon head cannot turn, so there's no recreating his fourth wall stare from Godzilla Monster of Monsters. Well, there's no Frankenstein. Come on, Bandai. And since this guy is a member of Monster Island, I'll do a quick run-through with what I have for his Denzians. Baragon fits in well decently. He seems slightly too large in some cases, especially next to the 68 Godzilla. And for that, you may fare better with the 2023 Bandai Movie Monster Series version of Baragon, as that version is slightly smaller. Overall, these guys all look great together here. It's funny, now that I have these guys all together, that we don't have a Baragon on all fours, being that it's how he's usually shown. Most of the standing poses are either due to him scrapping with Frankenstein or in promo photos. Hopefully we'll finally get that version later in the year, but for now, we've got these. The Bandai 2023 release is crucial in highlighting my point about his head sculpt. In the profile shot, there's an enormous difference in terms of who resembles the on-screen better. I hate to take the joy out of any Baragon figure, but it's a criticism that I can't let go of. When I first saw the Playmates figure at my local Target, I thought he was the best looking vinyl we'd ever gotten of him, until I really studied his head. Gah. Since then, my appreciation for Playmates' attempt has lessened. So the real question here is, who wins in this fight? I'll have the esteemed Jet Jaguar use his fists to tell you. Three punches from your boy, JJ, for the Playmates version. If I were to have scored this when I first picked him up, I would have skewed closer to a 5-punch rating. But now that I have him for a while and recently picked up the Bandai 2023 Baragon, which to compare the two, the Playmates edition has shown its flaws. Bandai 2023 Baragon scores the 4 punches. However, what he lacks in total costume accuracy, he makes up in several other ways. An embellished paint scheme, multiple points of articulation, solid, sturdy materials, and swept-back ears, a position that's rarely displayed on most toy renditions. Since Baragon is one of my top 3 favorites, I'm taking this too hard in terms of his sculpture. But to me, he has defined features that were not given attention through Playmates' work. Those giant ping-pong eyes should have been the main thing done right, even over the warped head itself. And the fact that standing him in a satisfactory static stance is challenging, since his feet are barely balanced on a flat surface, really illustrates that Playmates took 1 step forward with their effort, but 2 steps back, with some unfortunate imbalances in sculpt. However, if you want to look at it with a less biased lens, the objectionable thing to ask is, when I see this, do I see Baragon? And the answer is, yes. So, if that's good enough for you, then you will appreciate this more so. Despite looking like a downscaled version of the 1993 figure, the Bandai version edges this guy out in terms of visual representation. He's got a spot-on sculpt, with some nice details etched in. He scales better with his fellow Bandai Kaiju, which is a nice plus, as the Playmates version feels a bit bigger. Where he loses is to do with the articulation, especially since that neck joint is already visible, but nothing more than a glued seam. It kills what could have been a perfect figure. Also, despite accuracy to the film he's pulled from, this version sports less color, and may seem rather dull on your shelf. It's really apples to oranges here. And really, that's about all I have to say about Baragon. For enthusiasts like me, I like the idea of alternate display options of one character, like Bandai's Hedorah catalog. With the recent Godzilla Store fan poll, it looks like an all-fours version of Baragon is in the pipeline, and I'm here for it. But if you're looking for just one definitive interpretation, you might want to hold out for that. If your display has a Tutorial Monsters diorama and you need a decent Baragon, Playmates Edition is your guy. However, if you like Baragon in a more pure form, you can't lose with Bandai. He may not pop off your shelf, but his presence will still add to your growing cast of OG Kaiju. I foresee more Baragon reviews soon. In the meantime, please dig down deep, just like Baragon, and smash the like, hit the subscribe, and shoot the share to help this channel grow. I appreciate your time as I always do, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.